Welcome to another episode of the Crime Decoder with a new story, another crime and a new mystery. There are crimes that shake a town, and then there are crimes that shatter an entire country. In the summer of 2012, Ireland faced one of its darkest and most disturbing mysteries, one that would challenge the justice system, technology, and the very definition of consent. This is not a story about a simple disappearance. It's a story about a woman searching for connection. It's a man who wanted to watch her die. Elaine O'Hara lived two lives. In one, she was a childcare assistant from Blackrock, Dublin kind, quiet, shy. In the other, she was submissive, controlled, and consumed by a man she met online. A man who turned fantasies into fetishes and fetishes into fatal plans. She didn't hide her struggles. She was open about her depression, her loneliness, but she did hide who she was messaging and what he was demanding from her. It was a normal Wednesday. Elaine left work early. No one noticed anything strange. She was seen entering the cemetery near Shanganagh Park. Their messages grew darker. He pushed her toward fantasy, then reality. Elaine, lonely and mentally fragile, believed this was love. But to Dwyer, she was nothing more than a tool, an experiment. There was one message, one that would later haunt the courtroom. Elaine didn't know this voice memo would become her final cry for help. A whisper from beyond the grave, the chilling confession of a submissive, and a key piece of evidence that would destroy a man's lies. The story began to unravel. News outlets reported the crime as a case of sex gone too far. But this wasn't fantasy. It was a pattern, a predator, and a plan. Every victim has a life before their name becomes a headline. Elaine O'Hara wasn't just a case file. She was a daughter, a sister, a woman who loved animals and helping children. Born in 1976, Elaine grew up in Bray, a small town on Ireland's east coast. She was gentle, imaginative, and always a little shy. Her family described her as creative, kind, and incredibly sensitive. But even from an early age, she carried an invisible weight. Elaine struggled with social anxiety. She attempted self-harm, spent time in psychiatric care. But she was trying. She took her meds, saw therapists, and was determined to build a life worth living. After every fall, she got back up. But life would test her again. 2002, Elaine lost her mother, her rock. The grief was unbearable. Her mental health spiraled. Friends say she isolated herself. More, why she quit social outings. And her search for connection turned digital. Elaine's loneliness drove her to explore online communities, specifically BDSM chatroons, spaces where pain, control, and submission are central. Elaine didn't know she was stepping into a world that would destroy her. Online, he went by names like Master Uno One and Need Contro. He told her she needed to be owned. That pain would bring her meaning. At several points, Elaine tried to break free. She stopped messaging him, changed numbers. But each time Dwyer lured her back. She told friends she was dating someone unusual. She even tried to meet new people, but nothing compared to the power Dwyer held over her. Despite everything, Elaine tried to live a normal life. She worked with children, took night classes, helped her dad, but no one saw the storm brewing inside. When she met Dwyer in person, that storm became a trap she couldn't escape. Elaine O'Hara was not weak. She was wounded and wanted to be loved. But love doesn't come with pain. Love doesn't demand blood. Her life wasn't defined by her final days. But understanding those days and how she was groomed, isolated, and destroyed is the key to justice. August 22, 2012. A calm cloud-streaked afternoon in Black Rock, Dublin. For Elaine O'Hara, it was meant to be another step in her healing. But by sunset, she had vanished without a word, without a trace. 11 a.m. Elaine leaves work early. 12:20 p.m. stops at Dunn's Stores, buys a bottle of water. 2:05 p.m. seen on CCTV walking near Shanganug Park. 2:20 p.m. her phone goes dark. 2:30 p.m. her car is found parked near Shanganug Cemetery. The location was quiet, surrounded by tall trees and graves eerily symbolic. But there was no sign of a struggle, no screams reported, no body. Inside the car, her purse, medication, untouched. No wallet, no phone, no note. When Elaine didn't return that evening, I called her phone. No answer. I knew something was wrong. She always called back. By midnight, Frank O'Hara called. A missing person report was filed. The next morning, they began to search. Police dogs walking near the woods, helicopters circling above the park, divers entering nearby water. Early on, there was hesitation. Garda acknowledged Elaine's history of depression and psychiatric care. With no signs of foul play and a history of self-harm, the leading theory became suicide. Police says no evidence suggests criminal activity. Her family strongly disagreed. Elaine was planning her future. She was doing better. She didn't leave a note. Her father said the medication was too important. If she had intended to take her life, she would not have left it behind. Hundreds joined the search. Local news covered the case, but leads were scarce. No evidence, no phone, no personal items outside the car. It was as if she had walked into the trees and vanished. Hope faded. Weeks turned into months. The case cooled. The media began questioning the suicide theory. Elaine's father continued fighting. He met with journalists, distributed updated flyers, and pushed for renewed searches. A deeply vulnerable woman had vanished, but her past was being used as the entire explanation. There were no fingerprints lifted, no evidence bagged from her car. Her home wasn't sealed or searched extensively. Later, this would be criticized a potential crime scene, treated as an open and shut. Suicide. No one had seen her, but someone had known. The truth was buried. Not just in the mountains, but in SIM cards, emails, and a name. Graham Dwyer. September 10th, 2013. A fisherman stood at the edge of Vartree Reservoir in County Wicklow, casting into silence. What he reeled in wasn't a catch. It was the beginning of a storm. A discovery that would unravel a death no one believed and expose a darkness Ireland had never seen before. It was an ordinary-looking bag until he opened it. Inside, investigators would find restraints, a leather mask, nylon rope, a ball gag. At the bottom, 2 old mobile phones, SIM cards, and a set of keys. At first glance, it could have been dismissed as strange litter, but something about it didn't fit, and when they ran the SIM cards through the system, one name flashed back: Elaine O'Hara. The discovery triggered a full reactivation of the missing person case. Elaine had been gone for over a year, and now there was evidence, hard and undeniable. The question was no longer, did Elaine take her own life? It became, who put these items in this lake, and what else were they hiding? As police combed through the recovered evidence, something even darker would emerge. Just days later, a woman walking her dog on Killicky Mountain made another grim discovery: bone fragments. Scattered near the surface of the earth, expanded the perimeter. Beneath fallen leaves and tree roots, they uncovered more: teeth, human remains, a watch, part of a rib cage. Dental records confirmed what the O'Hara family had feared. Elaine was dead. But this was no suicide. This was staged, planned. 2 separate crime scenes. 2 separate counties. and someone had gone to great lengths to make sure she'd never be found. With modern forensics, the SIM cards became gold mines. Deleted texts were recovered, call logs, GPS data. One phone held hundreds of encrypted messages, violent, manipulative, terrifying, from a man calling himself master. The rope and restraints from the lake matched descriptions Elaine had written in her journals. The phones later linked directly to Graham Dwyer. But there was more. A third phone used to coordinate meetups, hide locations, and record violent fantasies, connected directly to Dwyer's private SIM. Detectives now believed the suicide theory had been part of a calculated effort to erase Elaine. The location of the bag, the scattering of bones, the removal of the phone all pointed to a plan, and the man behind that plan was about to become the center of a murder investigation. Elaine O'Hara hadn't vanished. She had been silenced, controlled until her final breath, and discarded like trash. Her voice, her messages, would become the weapon that exposed the truth. It started with hundreds of SMS texts, most from a number saved as master. The messages ranged from emotional to erotic, from sadistic to criminal. Messages like, "You are nothing without me. Your ultimate fantasy is death, and I will give it to you. Wouldn't it be beautiful if you were buried alive for me?" These weren't role plays. These were instructions, threats, emotional manipulation disguised as desire. Elaine often replied with submission, but between the lines was fear. But messages alone weren't enough. Garda turned to metadata, the hidden language behind every digital move. They matched text timestamps with Graham Dwyer's movements. He was present at nearly every major digital event. When Elaine was texted from the master number, Dwyer's personal phone was silent. A burner phone would activate and deactivate within range of his office. The trap was digital, and it was tightening. Dwyer was a married man, a father, an architect. No one suspected the world he was living in when the screens were off. Behind his professional mask, Graham Dwyer was sending videos, fantasies, and recordings of knife play, stabbing desires, and snuff scenarios to Elaine. A recovered video showed Dwyer stabbing himself during a sex act. Others featured recorded monologues about power, blood, and control. He claimed it was fantasy. But the digital trail proved it wasn't fiction. It was a manual for murder. The most damning evidence: the burner phone used to contact Elaine traveled with Graham. It was switched off just minutes after her death from a location near Kiliki Mountain. He told police he was at home. But his phone told a different story. She believed she was fulfilling a fantasy. But for Graham Dwyer, it was about erasing her completely. Elaine didn't want to die. She wanted to be loved. And Dwyer used her deepest fear, abandonment, to turn her into a puppet in his performance. And the evidence, the texts, videos, locations, now spoke louder than any courtroom confession. This is the Crime Decoder. Subscribe for more true stories that deserve to be heard.